Good day to all. Today we're going to discuss about working capital management concepts, and to begin with, we discuss about cash conversion, inventory, and receivables management. There is also another chapter talking about these particular topics. Let's begin. We can see on the next slide about current assets and liabilities as a percentage of total assets for US manufacturers from 1981 and also 2006. We can notice that for the first group, the 200 largest US manufacturing firms, there has been a decrease of current assets from 37.4%, for example, to 26.7% from the two respective years. That's true, since to be able to compute the percentage, that is basically current assets divided by the total assets. So if ever assets have grown throughout the years, for sure the percentages would be lowering down. This is also true for current liabilities. If you look into the aggregate or overall US manufacturing sector, that is also true. And current ratio, as discussed in financial statement analysis, which is current assets over current liabilities, would also go down since the values have also lowered down. Next, the concept of operating cycle is basically the time from the beginning of the production to the time when the cash is collected from sale. So production, sale, and collection, those are the three important stages. That's why for operating cycle purposes, in terms of days of computation, we have here the AAI and the ACP. AAI stands for the average age of inventory, which is basically the measure of time by which our inventory can be sold. So from production to sale. And the average collection period is the time in which the entity or the business can collect if any receivables are available. So this would be applicable to credit sales then. Now, financing the operating cycle is costly. So firms have an incentive to shrink the operating cycle. How come that is costly? Well, if, for example, our inventories are slowly moving, we are going to account for the corresponding costs, like carrying costs of maintaining the inventory. So the more that we keep the inventory, the more costs there are for carrying them or keeping them, which will be discussed under carrying costs in the latter slides. And then also, if we do not collect early, then that would also affect or have impact to availability of our cash, which can be used for payment purposes, supposedly. Next, for cash conversion cycle, we just carry forward operating cycle, less now the incorporation of the payment of our accounts payable in terms of the number of days as well. So the APP or average payment period. Now, cash conversion cycle or CCC is OC less the average payment of period. And we have known a while ago that OC is AAI plus ACP. Just take note of the formula. So basically, the cash conversion cycle is the time in which we can sell our inventories, collect the receivables, and pay our payables in the short term. Take note, we're talking about operating, so operations of the business. Now, we can see this on figure 16-1 about operating cycle from the time that we are going to purchase our raw materials at this time zero. We introduce that into production. The goods are already completed or finished, and we sell them on account. That is average age of inventory or AAI. The ACP, on another hand, is when we sell our finished goods on account. After that, then we have receivables, and then we collect such receivables. So that's ACP. So if we look at this illustration, that is basically a total of 115 days, 70 days plus 37 plus 8. And then this also includes the mailing of the payment or our collection. Because if we are going to think about this setup or this setting, which was way back like 2006, so we do not utilize much of our modern ways of payment. We have, for example, our over-the-counter of the banks. You have the internet banking, the mobile banking with the apps rampant. So it would have been easier. But anyway, that's the concept in the traditional setup. On another hand, we also need to introduce the APP, average payment period of 40 days, so that if we deduct from operating cycle the number of days, therefore, the time it takes for us to purchase raw materials, finish the goods, and then sell the goods on account, collect the receivables, and pay our accounts payable accordingly is a matter of 75 days. And this is our CCC, or cash conversion cycle. Next, for table 16-2, we can see the operating and cash conversion cycles for selected companies fiscal year 2006 and using our respective formulas. So for average age of inventory, we have to take note that, remember, our formula is that it's going to be 365 days divided by our inventory turnover. And we have to take note that inventory turnover represents how speedy, how fast can we sell our inventories. And our formula is cost of sales divided by our average inventory. So basically, what we can do is that this formula here is a matter of the shortcut already. But should we like to really go into the respective computations, which are very important, and again, discussed already in financial statement analysis, but we just have to dig deeper here. So the inventory turnover, once again, is our cost of sales divided by inventory. So for example, for IBM, that's 53.129 divided by 2.810. So that's 18.9071 ... for our respective inventory turnover. And we're going to do M plus, meaning to record that if we're using certain calculators, or we can just jot that down. Then 365 divided by that answer. So we have to review, of course, if ever our answer is right for a while. So make sure that you are using your calculators as well to compute. All right, so hopefully you were able to take note of that. And indeed, we will get 19.30 as our average age of inventory. Next, for ACP, or average collection period, we can focus on the receivables. So we compute the receivables turnover, which represents how fast or speedy it is for us to be able to have receivables from our production. So we sell our goods. And then to compute receivables turnover, that is sales divided by AR. If we can notice, for AAI, that's item number 6, it's a partner of cost of sales and inventory, which is true. Sales and then AR. So sales 91.424 divided by AR of 28.655, we get 3.190 ... Then take note of that, 365 divided by that answer equals 114.40 days. It's really true. Next, for average payment period, what we are going to make use of will be our, supposedly, it would be, if there is sales for AR, AP would have been our purchases or net credit purchases. In fact, for sales, it should have been net credit sales. But because we are not given our purchases, so we proceed to the next, which is cost of sales. So 53.129 divided by our accounts payable, 18.006. So that's 2.950 ... And then 365 divided by that respective answer. So we should be able to get 123.70 days. So I'm going to give you like a minute to be able to do that. All right, so hopefully you were able to get it out of the formulas. Then for the cycles in days, we have the OC, which is the sum of 6 and 7. We got 133.7. And for our CCC, so that is just a matter of deducting further our APP. We can notice there in number 10 for Apple and Hewlett Packard or HPQ that our CCC becomes negative. So that means that it's better for the company to have that since we are able to extend or stretch our payment period. Basic concept in financial management is that for as long as we are able to extend or stretch the payment terms and period of our liabilities without incurring any additional penalties, surcharges, or taxes, then that's going to be better for the company. So take note of that. Then shortening the cash conversion cycle, as what I've said a while ago about having stretched payment period, basically is in accordance to our goal, basic goal in financial management, which is maximizing the shareholder or shareholders' value. And what are these ways to minimize the CCC? We can shorten our AAI or average age of inventory, so sell the inventories as quickly as possible. Then we collect the receivables as quickly as possible also, so shorten the ACP, and we pay accounts as slowly as possible. So bigger or greater number of days for the average payment of the period. And that's why negative results could come out of CCC. And then also we reduce mail and processing and clearing time because that would have added to our average collection period. If we can eliminate, but I don't think so for processing, mailing can be, but for processing and clearing, it would take days, even for the modern times. If we pay, for example, through our apps like GCash, or if we pay through example, online banking, there would be 2 to 3 processing days. So whether we like it or not, it's there. But at least we can eliminate by not having the mailing time anymore. Now for trade-offs, meaning to say the interplay of factors in terms of costs in the short-term setup, a year or less in financial management, there would be. So to balance both operating assets and short-term financing, there would be trade-offs between cost one and cost two. Cost one would be about the marginal cost or the additional or the increased cost with increasing balances of the short-term operating assets. And should we decrease them, there would be marginal benefits. And then the optimum balance occurs at the point where total cost is minimized. Whether we like it or not, there are some costs that would really increase as we have more units of our products, for example, but there are some that would decrease. So cost one and cost two respectively. And especially with our operating assets. This is really true with inventories, but this is also true with other assets. So if we can see, cost one increases as there are more items on the x-axis. And then if ever, for example, we look at the cost two, there are marginal benefits because the more units there are on the x-axis, then the lesser such cost is or becomes. Had we added the two costs, then we can see that the cost is U-shaped with respect to the curve. So in that case, it decreases to an extent or up to a point, but continues to increase in some other points. So decrease, and then from one point to the lowest point. But then if we go beyond that lowest point, it increases further on. So that's the trade-off. Like we can do decreasing, but only up to a certain extent. Okay, and this particular lowest point, or if this is a curve, this is the trough, as we call it, then that is the optimum point. So that's the level, for example, of the inventories or receivables or cash and cash equivalents or marketable securities, wherein the company would be in balanced position. Next, the trade-offs in respect to the situations for operating assets and short-term financing. So assets and liabilities, short-term, by the way, current terms respectively. If there's an increase in account balance, what would be the impact of that for cash and marketable securities? So there would be cost one, increased cost, so opportunity cost of funds. Supposedly, we should have been able to use them in some other situations or cases that would have benefits to the company. But because we kept them, there would be benefit forgone. Remember, opportunity cost is the benefit forgone if we select one item over the other. Cost two is the liquidity and solvency costs. So the benefits that we think about. Because of increased balance, we can avoid illiquidity, and then we can, of course, improve our solvency to pay our long-term obligations. For inventory, the increased cost would be carrying costs, as what I've said a while ago, all about keeping the inventories, financing, warehousing, and obsolescence, which is an important cost because some inventories, like technological ones or gadgets, would become unusable after a certain period of time or passage of time. For cost two, we talk about the order and setup costs. So if ever, for example, we keep them, there would be lesser ordering cost because we don't have to order them once more or to order more inventory. So such would result to benefits. For AR, if we have more of them, then more chances of keeping them, the cost of keeping them, and also chances of the bad debts or portion that we cannot collect. And later on, could result to more accounts written off, hopefully not. But for the cost two, the more benefits, opportunity cost of lost sales due to overly restrictive credit policy and or terms. If we say restrictive, we need to say our standards are very high. In fact, it's also overly, so very, very high, at least very high though. Then in that case, so the opportunity cost of lost sales, there would be benefit forgone, and then because of letting go of sales. Next, short-term financing, we have AP, accruals, and notes payable. The effect of increased balance would be the cost of reduced liquidity caused by increasing current liabilities. What do you mean by this? So if we look at it, that is true since if we keep liabilities like the current ones, remember that would have impact on liquidity. The more that they are staying there, then that would reduce our liquidity because we are not paying them anymore or in the short term. For our benefits, if we use short term, we let go of the fact that we can have used or we can have applied more expensive long-term debt and equity financing. As a general rule, short-term financing is less expensive than the long-term. To continue, we now discuss about inventory management. So optimal level of inventory is achieved, just like with that curve a while ago, in order to increase shareholder value. In financial management, again, our ultimate goal is to maximize shareholders' wealth or value. Then we can minimize the investment in inventory without causing production disruptions. That's our target. Otherwise, our purpose of minimizing our carrying costs would be useless. Then the smaller the level of inventory, then the smaller the asset turnover will be, since in that case, we don't have much inventories and we don't have much cost of sales. So both numerator and denominator would be lowering down. Therefore, the ratio would be lowering down as well. Then in that case, if you have smaller inventory, then we have lesser short-term financing requirements. For controlling inventory, we can do some techniques. One of that is ABC system. In ABC system, from the name itself, ABC, we segregate the inventory or separate the inventory into three groups, either A, B, or C. A would have the largest investment, and because we have the largest investment, then our control would be the most intensive. The A group would be the lesser in terms of number of items because they are costing more. In fact, 90% of inventory costs. While the C would be the least costly, like 2% of inventory costs, but they are the most in number. Think about a grocery store and a shopping mall wherein there are some sections selling expensive items like jewelry. So jewelries would have the least number, 20% of items, so as well as the other expensive items, but then they would represent like the bigger costs as compared with the grocery section items. For the techniques of controlling, it is summarized on the left side in black. So again, A, B, and C with respect to their components of the cost, we have here, we can check this out. That x-axis represents percentage of items in inventory, while y dollar investment or total dollar investment in inventory. For group A, the lowest percentage of items, but the highest cost of 90%, while B, just the next 30% in terms of the number of items, but 8% for the cost or dollar investment. On another hand, the C is 50% of the number of items, but 2% of the cost. Therefore, we focus on the more costly items, or the large dollar investments would be carefully controlled as compared with the others, which are less carefully controlled, but still to be controlled, of course, because they are assets of the company. To be able to achieve a balance, we use the AOQ model, or economic order quantity model, in which it is used in determining the optimal order quantity for an inventory item. We normally use this in controlling big ticket items, such as those included in the A group. Big ticket because, again, they have more costs. AOQ considers operating and financial costs, not just the cost of keeping the balances of inventories, receivables, and also being able to collect the corresponding, again, collections and pay our liabilities, but also the financial costs. So those additional items. Then the key cost would be order cost, is that it's actually the fixed cost as a total or whole per amount of order, because we can notice that it goes down as more units are being ordered or being carried in terms of inventory, because this means that if we have more number of balances of inventory, more units of them, then we don't order more. While carrying cost is variable, because the more units that we keep as inventory balances, then the more the cost that we have to keep them. And then the total cost is the sum of the two. For carrying cost being variable, it is upward sloping from left to right, but order cost is fixed, so it is downward sloping from left to right. Now, we can see here on this illustration about that. So total cost is really going to lower down up to the point of the optimal level of inventory, or EOQ, as discussed also on the respective illustration of achieving optimal balance for assets, and it would increase after that. We can see that the carrying cost is upward sloping from left to right in red, since the more units that we carry, the more that carrying cost would increase. While our order cost is that it actually starts at high, and then it would go lower as we have more units. Because the order cost decline and the carrying costs rise as the order quantity increases in size, the total of the two costs tends to be U-shaped. As said a while ago, it goes lower down to the point of economic order quantity, and it goes upwards after that. The point of intersection of carrying cost and order cost curve actually is the economic order quantity, where the two costs are equal. For the mathematical approach, that's graphical a while ago, but anyway, resulting to the same thing, we just have to take note of the following variables. So S is inventory usage per period, typically on year. O is order cost per order. C is carrying cost per unit per period, while Q is the order quantity in our units perspective. Then Order cost is cost per order times the number of orders. So that would be O on the variable, while the number of orders would be how much units do we need in a year. So that's typically our demand, estimated demand in a year, divided by the order quantity in units. So how many respective units do we need? So therefore, that represents our number of orders. Q is the number of units in an order. So with that, cost per order times the number of orders will be the total ordering cost. For the carrying cost, assuming that inventory is used at a constant rate, that would be C times the average inventory, in which average inventory is Q, order quantity in units divided by 2. And therefore, to get the total cost, that is O multiplied by S over Q, again, cost per order times number of orders, plus C, our carrying cost per unit per period times the average inventory, which is the order quantity in units, the number of units to be ordered divided by 2. And EOQ is the order quantity that minimizes the total cost, in which the two costs, order and carrying costs, would be equal. To compute that, this EOQ is equal to the square root of the quantity of 2 times S times O over our denominator, that is C. Allow me to show that in little scale. All right, going back. So we have that already. And then in terms also of reorder points and safety stock, reorder points would be the specific points in time that we need to buy our raw materials coming from our suppliers. Reorder point is equal to lead time in days, so the number of days from the respective ordering point to another, and then times the daily usage of the respective inventories. So example, Garrison Industries uses about 44 units per day. So that's going to be 16,000 units for 365 days. So we can recheck that. Or 16,000 divided by 365 equals 44. And then it takes 4 days to place and receive an order. Again, the time, lead time from one ordering point to another. So in that case, 4 times 44 or 4 days times 44 units equals 176 units. Then Garrison maintains safety stock to prevent stock outs. Yes, because if, for example, there would be orders to be carried out and to be sold to our respective customers, if, for example, we do not have safety stock or the level of inventory that is being kept, then we would have the cost of not being able to sell, so the stock outs. Again, Garrison, the company, maintains safety stock to prevent stock outs if faster than anticipated usage or delayed orders. So there should be a margin, safety margin of inventories, just in case there would be some respective or some applicable faster than as expected usage of our, let's say, products. So there would be emergency purchases, or example, the orders are getting delayed. That's the point of that. And then finally, for inventory, we also have to mention MRP. And then this is all about material requirements planning. That's MRP1. MRP1 is focused on the material requirements, while MRP2 is focused on the manufacturing resource. So in addition to material requirements or raw materials, we also include our direct labor and factory overhead items. So MRP, again, 1 is focused on material requirements. Hence the term M stands for material, R for requirements, P for planning. Material requirements planning 1. Computerized system to control the flow of inventory within the production process. Then we also have a master schedule to coordinate resources flows. While MRP2, as explained a while ago, including all other manufacturing costs, would actually include or incorporate data from other departments, let's say on those departments focused with not just the purchasing of materials, but also for the labor coming from our human resource and production. and also the supplies of our respective factory overhead. On another hand, just-in-time systems or GIT philosophy is a concept or philosophy wherein as soon as certain orders are being made by our customers, our suppliers are also ready just in time to be able to deliver the necessary materials to supply such orders. This is a system to ensure that materials arrive exactly when they are needed for production, as said. And then our vendors or suppliers play a strategic role in ensuring successful just-in-time. That's why if we do just-in-time or JIT philosophy, it should be that we have plenty of vendors, such that if vendor A cannot supply, we have vendor B, vendor C, with more or less exact quality, so that the quality of our final products would not be sacrificed. All right, that's the first part of our discussions involving working capital management. To be more specific, we're still on our cash, receivables, and inventory management. Thank you very much for listening, and God bless us all.